This is Under the Classic Rock. Today we're looking into the blue-eyed soul of the Young Rascals.
1, 2, 3.
Well, actually there were 4 Rascals. Felix Cavalieri on piano and Hammond organ, Gene Cornish on guitar and harmonica, Eddie Brigatti on vocals and percussion, and Dino Dinelli on drums. They all came out of the neighborhood garage bands from New Jersey to upstate New York. In 1963, while Felix Cavalieri was at Syracuse University playing with his band, Felix and the Escorts, he got a call from Joey D and the Starlighters to join them on a European tour.
The name of the dance is the peppermint twist.
It was during that European tour that 3 of the Rascals met, and it was on that tour that Felix, Gene, and Eddie decided being sidemen was not for them. When the tour was finished, the 3 quit the Starlighters and departed to Cavalieri's basement where he had his Hammond organ set up. Cavalieri had done some Vegas gigs with a drummer, which he then called and asked if he wanted to join him down his basement. Gene Cornish remembered that first rehearsal as a life-changing event. He said they immediately gelled and they were a tight little band right from the start. After getting a show together of cover songs, the Rascals were off playing local New Jersey and New York clubs, and they were getting noticed immediately. From the time the band got together as a simple basement band to their first single was about a year. In 1965, they were playing in a Long Island nightclub when Ahmet Ertegun from Atlantic Records heard them. He immediately scooped them up into the Atlantic R&B roster, and they quickly released an album of mostly covers that contained their first single. And then the band got hooked up with major manager Sid Bernstein, and he immediately moved them quickly onto TV screens and record players nationwide with hit records. But before they released their first album, they had to change their name to the Young Rascals, because a band called the Harmonica Rascals objected to their calling themselves just the Rascals. Well, after a couple of years, the band finally said, "Ah, the hell with this," and went back to calling themselves just the Rascals.
Oh, wise guy.
According to Felix Cavalieri in an article from ClassicBands.com, the Rascals' formula was simple: Marvin Gaye's voice, Ray Charles' piano, Jimmy Smith's organ, with Phil Spector's production and the Beatles' writing. After the modest hit with "Ain't Gonna Eat Your Heart Out," the Young Rascals released their first #1 song, "Good Lovin'." Then the writing team of Eddie Brigatti and Felix Cavalieri kicked in on their 3rd album, and they started releasing their own songs. The AM pop tunes continued through 1966 into 1968.
On a Sunday afternoon, how can I be sure? I really, really, really want to know. Beautiful morning, each bird keeps singing his own song.
Then the FM format started to come into the pop rock mainstream, clamoring for longer cuts and more introspective lyrics. The Rascals' album, Once Upon a Dream, was the first concept album for the band. All previous albums had been to package their singles, and just one single came from this album. Felix Cavalieri said the album was the band's attempt at doing a Sgt. Pepper type album. Their faithful R&B fans were not impressed, but some new fans liked the album a lot. In 1968 also saw the release of the band's biggest selling album. It was a collection of all their previous hits. It was called Time, Peace, the Rascals' greatest hits.
I've been lonely too long.
At the end of 1968, in response to the assassination of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, the Rascals released People Gotta Be Free. It was the band's last #1 hit.
All the world over so easy to sleep. People everywhere just wanna be free.
In 1969, 2 other singles were released from Freedom Suite, Ray of Hope and Heaven, but a lot of critics saw this double album as excess. It was just too much. The Rascals were trying to fit into the FM niche. One cut called Cute was just a jam session caught on tape, It took up an entire side of an album and was not well received by FM jocks that it was aimed at. In 1969 through 71, we heard the last attempts at new albums from the original band. They were called Sea and Search and Nearness. There was a slight hit from those attempts called Carry Me Back. Eddie Brigati left the band in 1970. Then Gene Cornish in 1971. Cavalieri and Dinelli tried to keep the band up with session players, releasing Peaceful World in 1971 and 1972's Island of Real. Neither made much of a ripple on the charts. And it was not until 2012 when Stephen Van Sant from the East Reed Band brought the Rascals back together for Once Upon a Dream. It was a series of concerts and stints on Broadway that at first went very well, but then it all fell apart, and the last show for the Rascals was in April of 2013. The Rascals were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as the Rascals and the Young Rascals in 1997. Some quick true and false before we put the Rascals back in their cages. True, the Young Rascals first appear on screen and on their first album wearing little boys' school uniforms. You can catch their first Ed Sullivan appearance with those uniforms on YouTube. And false, Good Lovin' was not a Cavalieri Brigati tune. It was written by Rudy Clark and Arthur Resnick and first performed by the Olympics, who had Billy Preston on keyboards. You can help support the show by going to undertheclassicrock.com. I'm Bill Hemberger. Thanks a lot for listening and downloading Under the Classic Rock.